Okay, hello. Welcome to Veda. I'm just going to quickly, just talk about the structure. So I'm going to start off with a few yin postures just to open up the upper back and just so we can kind of start to receive this information that will be relayed throughout the course of the next hour or so. And I'm also going to kind of briefly talk about this full moon in Gemini, and that will kind of give you a bit of context as to why we're talking about conflict and communication. Rihanna's going to talk about the doshas and each kind of individually and how they all can deal with conflict and how they communication to deal with tricky situations. And then we're going to hopefully end, if you're comfortable, with a nice little bit of just open discussion, any questions, bit of a chit chat, whatever really. So, okay, so this full moon in Gemini, it, as we've just discussed with Polly, is all about communication. So Gemini, ruled by Mercury, is very much about kind of like intellect, the voice, communication, like I said, and also this moon in particular is about like letting things get, like letting negative thoughts and energy go. And we kind of really come to a point as we enter the very final month of this year as well, and we really do start to kind of question what we might have said in the past year, what we could have said, what we could have done to maybe make situations better, what we could have done to avoid making situations worse. And I'd like throughout this whole kind of session for you to use it as a point of reflection, but also just really use it as like a clearing exercise to really just really think about kind of like individually how we can all move forward, because that's again what Gemini is, and the full moon in a sense. It's about moving forward and looking to, and you know, it has been a tricky year, and I would just invite you to think about how maybe in the future we can deal with things and look at kind of like fighting for justice and communicating effectively to better the lives of others. So again, going back to the full moon in Gemini, we also will be looking at mudras within this session, because Gemini is associated with the hands, and I'm a Gemini. I have a massive fascination with hands. I never knew why. I was a nail artist for ages, and I was like, and I've always loved mudras, and I'm like, what? That's mental. And anyway, so I found this out a while ago, and I was like, oh well, this explains everything. So we're going to go through some mudras as well that are just really nice to kind of have in your back pocket to meditate with, and to really kind of like ground and cement that energy. And we're also going to look at some chants that you can do. You can do them internally or externally. I'm going to kind of attempt to sing them a little bit. But yeah, again, just like really nice to activate that throat chakra as well. So without further ado, I'm going to now move into just some kind of like really slow asana now, just so we can kind of get grounded, get going. And I'd like you to get into balasana, child's pose, with your knees together. And we're just going to do 3 of these. So Gemini, as the 3rd zodiac sign, I'd like to reflect that in just these 3 postures in this kind of like upper back opening section. So when you're in balasana with the knees together, I'd just like to drape your upper body over the knees and let the arms rest by the outer thighs with the palms facing up, and the forehead, the 3rd eye towards the ground. And we're just going to stay here for 3 minutes. And in these 3 minutes, we're just going to imagine the space in between the shoulder blades start to peel open, and imagine a green light radiating throughout the back body. And this green light is associated with the Anahata chakra, the area of compassion in the body. As we start to invite warmth and positive reflection, communication, and discourse into this space. And with the mouth closed, start to deeply inhale and exhale through the nostrils. And begin to feel the vibrations of the atoms in between your musculature start to vibrate as space is created in this region of the body. As this green light shines out of the back body, also imagine the green light reflecting back in towards yourself, shining through the back ribs, the spine, trickling, surfacing the lungs, the heart, and nestling itself in there. We're going to stay here for a further minute in silence, just breathing into this space before we move on. And slowly, when you're ready, make your way back up to sit on your heels with a straight spine, or spine that's as straight as it can be. And then move forward onto your hands and knees. And we take the right arm and we thread it through and go into a nice upper body twisted stretch. And we stay here for a minute and a half in Pajra Balasana. And again, feel the stretch between the shoulder blades. Feel that back body open. I feel like we talk about the heart opening a lot, but we never really talk about the back body opening. And it's just as important to receive as it is to give this energy, especially during this time of Vata season. Also, as Gemini, being in the full moon, and we can start to get quite nervous with this energy and jittery. And this energy that we give out, it's a lot, this full moon energy, it's very abundant and it can be quite extroverted. But we need to cultivate the introvert within us and really just receive all of that lovely warm glow, that green emerald light that's just nourishing our back body. We stay here for just under another minute. And if we're capable of turning down the distractions and the noise of the outside world, then we can give ourselves a clear target. And this is what the eclipse that we're facing, that's coming up, is really going to set us up for success in. This clarity and this clearing of energy, which really does take out all of that white noise from our lives. And when you're ready, we're going to just switch sides and just come up and Just stay in all fours position just for a moment or so. And just if you need to wriggle out the head or the hips or anything, just there we go. And then again, when you're ready, lift up the left arm and thread it through as we move on to the other side. And if you want, you can extend the right arm and hand palm forward, or you can wrap it round the left hip to touch the inner left thigh, whatever feels best for you. I actually find that just the first variation of just bending my my arm that's not threaded through, my right arm in this situation, is give me a real extra push and creates further space, but whatever's best for you. And again, just breathing in and out, never forgetting the breath. Gemini is very fast-paced, very kind of, people often look at Geminis and think they're a little bit all over the place. They're a little bit flighty in a sense. And they're also known to kind of have multiple sides to them. They're multifaceted. And all of this information, this energy can really be, it can add an element of confusion, especially to people who are observing a Gemini or in the company of Gemini energy. And just use this time, use the breath to really kind of like find clarity within that, that energy of abundance. When you're ready, you unthread the left arm and then sit back and come into an easy seated position, Sukhasana, and just face the front of your mat or just the screen or whatever. And just a final little stretch for the upper back body. We're gonna take the arms into an eagle position or Garudasana. So you take your right arm and thread it underneath your left. And then you might kind of, I can touch my hands, but you might be here, or it doesn't matter where you are, just to kind of get as much stretch into the back body as you can. You can also, if you don't feel like you can do that, you can just wrap your hands like this. But we're then just going to bend over as much as you can and just let the upper body drape over the knees, the shins, wherever you are. And just again, breathe into this space. As this green light that is both radiating out from in between your shoulder blades and also being absorbed at the same time, as it continues to be absorbed, just imagine it kind of solidifying within you and becoming part of you. As you really feel what it is to receive, be loved, to feel understood, to feel heard and listened to. And take another half a minute here. When you're ready, slowly roll the spine up. Let the crown of the head shine up towards the ceiling, and then unwrap the arms and take the opposite arm underneath. When you're ready, we again drape over the shins, let the head fall. And as we come to the final stretch that we visit within this receiving practice, the short receiving practice, to begin our talk, start to think about something that you would welcome and receive in your life, and let this be as quote unquote selfish as you want. What do you really feel like you would like to receive in your life? This can be anything from love, friendship, company, touch, to a nice slice of chocolate cake this evening. Anything, and just let yourself receive it and imagine yourself receiving whatever you want to. And just know that you are valid in wanting that, and you can receive. You don't need to deny. A few more breaths here, and then we roll the spine back up. And then as the head comes up and sits on the shoulders, the neck straight, we just let our palms unwind, let go, and just drop either palms down or palms up. Wherever they fall, just know that that's where they were meant to be. We just sit here for a couple more seconds, just taking in that short little practice. And I'd like to open this session with one Om. If you, I'm going to chant it out loud, but if you would like to just chant it in your head, then that's fine. So I'm going to bring the palms together in Anjali Mudra, with the elbows sticking out towards the side, so you've got a little triangle here going on. I'm going to inhale, exhale, and then after the next inhale, I'm going to chant Om. And without further ado, I would like to invite Rhiannon to begin her talk on conflict and communication.
Thank you, that was absolutely lovely. So for anyone who's watching the recording that doesn't know me, I'm Rihanna. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner in Sheffield. And I'm just going to share the screen with you because I'm going to do this via a PowerPoint. So get comfy, relax, make sure you've got a drink. So why is Ayurveda relevant when we start talking about conflict and communication? Well, Ayurveda, I know the live people on the chat know what this is. But I'm going to go through some of the fundamentals to explain to anyone who doesn't. Feel free to switch off if you know all this already. So Ayurveda is a 5,000 year plus old medical system from Sri Lanka and India, and it is concerned with health and clarity and health of the earth and health of the mind and health in our relationships, and it's very holistic in nature, and and it's Ayurvedic medicine concerns itself with the treatment of disease, disease prevention, life enhancement, and awareness development. So, you know, we made this collective because we see a lot of platforms where the bodily wellness side is discussed, and that is so important and great. But we see less platforms where other aspects are discussed, and that's where applied Ayurveda comes in, because Ayurveda is so holistic and brilliant and can be applied to pretty much everything, and that's what we want to talk about on this platform. So that's just a little intro to Welcome to Veda as well. So, you know, to get this life enhancement and this awareness development, we do need to look at the aspects of the mind, not just the physical body or even the natural body around us. These come into it and are related, but yeah, the mind. We have to work on our consciousness, how it interacts with the world. We have maybe a responsibility to do this as beings with such a vivid, clear consciousness. And in Ayurveda, we talk about the 5 elements, and we talk about these elements belonging to everything. So the earth, the water, the fire, the air, the ether. We can see it all around us in nature, and we also have it present in our bodies. It acts in different ways in the physical functions, and it acts in the mind as well. Now, we do have certain characteristics. I think, you know, in any medicine form, if we're speaking about people, we can see that we're very different from each other. We can see different constitutions. We can see that some people will eat something and, you know, they'll feel this way, and another person will eat something and they'll feel another way. And, you know, we've got lots of different ways to explain this. But in Ayurveda, we use the elements to explain that. We explain it that these 5 elements are present in all of us and really necessary for bodily function and mental function. But also we do have predominance in some of the elements. And this is kind of unique to the individual. And this is how we categorize them: Vata, Kapha, and Pitta. Vata we group as air and ether, Kapha water and earth, and Pitta as fire and water. So someone might be a little bit higher in Vata dosha, or Kapha dosha, or a dual dosha of Vata Kapha, and this really does affect how we relate to the world and things around us, the personalities we might have, the foods we might like, the people we might find interesting, and you know, in this way, it's really helpful with conflict and communication to understand these, because I think we often, you know, a lot of the Western mentality, especially if you look at Western medicine, considers us to all be very similar. And, you know, we have one pill for this illness, and that's, you know, that's the blanket case. And we also do that in psychology. So we're like, all right, do these things and then you'll feel better. And we have lots of different approaches. Maybe you find different ones useful. However, we find it hard to categorize them, and we find that hard to connect them to an individual. So we might have to just trial and error loads before we find something that fits. Whereas Ayurveda gives us a little bit more of a guide to that, I think. Ayurveda helps us understand what is different about us and what is the same about us. You know, who's in our group with us? Why do we relate to that person differently to that person? And why do I find this thing really challenging, but my sister, she's fine with it? You know, why does that happen? And that is because of these predominant elements within our body. To some extent, this helps us understand that. We also have attributes of the mind. So we have tamas, sattva, and rajas. And as you can see, tamas is sort of substance or inertia, sattva is intelligence and peace, and rajas is energy and desire. And yeah, I think we think we're sort of, you know, in Ayurveda, the aim kind of is this sattvic state, like that is kind of enlightenment. In Buddhism, is this state of total peace and harmony. But actually, Ayurveda does respect all of these states as useful and important and relevant at some point. And you know, you might feel peace and harmony in this sattvic state, but it's really hard to get to. So we really have to consider the other states we might be part of at this time. Rajas, you know, when we talk about a rajastic state, we're talking about that feeling of desire, that feeling of want and need, and our sensual responses to things. So when we, you know, and a really nice food and what that does to us, yes, I want more of that. And, you know, energy, drive. We see this around us a lot, this feeling, that's rajastic feeling, never satisfied. And tamas is this kind of dull feeling, this inertia, this darkness, this kind of feeling of being asleep and in the body and the mind, just very low and sticky, and you know, a little bit like imbalanced kapha. So they, you know, they relate to the doshas in that way. And it's kind of understood that we can move through these. So we start with tamas. We might start in this sort of deep inertia, and then we first need to recognize and kind of bring some fire in, and then we get rajastic, we get passion and drive. And then after that, what do we do with it? What do we do with all this desire? We find something deeper, we find something more peaceful, and we find contentment. So that's, you know, that's a process of the mind that Ayurveda can explain. So just, yeah, this is just an introduction to those, really, because they do, I think, help us understand when we start talking about, you know, conflict and communication and relationships and all these other things. It's useful to kind of refer back to. And if you actually look at the mind, its main element is space. You know, you can see that with the chakras as well. Because it's expansive, it can hold many, many things. It evolves and it grows, and it can just grow bigger and bigger throughout our life. And you know, sorrow and sadness is when that's constricted. So it's when that space can't expand and it's closed. We feel sorrow. And bliss is this kind of feeling of expansiveness of space. How do the other elements interact with the mind? They definitely have a place in the mind. And if you know about the doshas, and if you can see them just here, you might start attributing the doshas to this system of the mind as well. So for example, you know, air in the mind is mental movement and thought and creativity. So if you're predominant in Vata dosha, you might have that a bit more than someone else. Woo, lots of movement in the mind. And if you have a lot of fire, I mean, we have all of these to some extent, that's important to note. You know, fire in the mind creates passion and intellect and transformation, you know. Pitta, like very driven at work, very, you know, on that path. And water in the mind is love and sadness and compassion. You know, it's gentle and calm and kind. If you have a kapha person in your life, or if you have that in your own body, you can probably feel that. It can be really sad, but it can be like really deep love as well. And then earth is memory, serves as memory and attachment. So kapha people have very good memories. Elephant is the animal that's kind of linked to that. And yeah, so Whereas, if you have a lot of vata in your body and your mind, you might struggle with that. You might struggle with memory. So those are just some things to note before we start talking about the mind a little bit more. And I'm just putting up these just for your kind of, if you're looking at the recording and you don't know about these things, you can always screenshot this just for your information. So this is what we look at when we look at vata, just so we can start to connect with these things in our body. What am I feeling most? If you're confused, you might be a dual dosha, or you might have an imbalance at this time, and that's nothing to worry about. It just means that maybe you don't experience all the positives of this thing. You maybe only experience the negatives right now. And that's okay. So attributes of vata: we feel dry, light, cold, rough, fine, and mobile. It sits in the colon, pelvis, thighs, bones, ears, and skin. So if you have a vata buildup, it might build up in these areas. And these are the functions. So we all need vata in our life. You can see many different, very important functions. And you can start to think about, these sites and these functions, and you can start to think about that in terms of communication. So how does that affect our communication? Maybe we communicate through movement more. Maybe we can, communicate through creativity. Kapha, so attributes: oily, cold, slow, smooth, static. And these are the places that it might build up in the body. And we can have a look at the functions. We can have a look at, if your kapha is imbalanced, you start to sleep a lot, you might feel, your immunity starts to go down. We need kapha for immunity, it's very important. Love and compassion, contentment, forgiveness. So we can already start to see this is not really a dosha that maybe we associate with conflict very much. And pitta, probably if you know about Ayurveda at all, probably the dosha we associate most with kind of raging conflict. But we're going to look at lots of different types of conflict. So we know that's not the only type. But maybe a little bit more likely to get into, starting to feel anger in the body. Maybe feeling frustration quite a lot, or jealousy. Oily, hot, sharp, light. We can think of these things in nature and how they react to other things. A fire can destroy things, but it can also transform things. And the sights, so, having some like IBS symptoms, when you're angry, like it's all related, we can feel that in our body. If we're concentrating too much and doing lots of thinking, lots of pitta work, we might have very sensitive eyes, or we might get a headache. That's actually head just under that picture. And what does it govern? It governs taste, but taste for life as well, ambition and courage and knowledge, So we start to think about, how would this person communicate? And here is a little bit of a summary of the gunas. As you can see, harmony, balance, stability, inward and upward nature. This is what we can find in sort of contentment. Maybe at some point in our life we have already experienced this. Maybe we're on the path to experiencing this in some aspects. Maybe not all the time, but sometimes. And this is like, change and turbulence, distress, action. So it says, the causes of distress and conflict. So often it's this desire, this anger, this change that causes conflict, and the dullness, the heaviness, the ignorance. So vata communication, as you can see, vata is very associated with the throat chakra. This is the communication channel, really important to vata. So important. I mean, when we talk about communication, we have to talk about vata immediately, because that's so important to vata, and that's how vata lives in the body, and communicates with the rest of the world. It's through verbal language, it's through words. They have to come out. So it's necessary for fulfillment and connection, You know, if a Vata dominant person isn't listened to, that's a real problem. That can feel like a lump, like a physical lump in the throat. Or if they're misunderstood, they've said something, but they can't, no one's understanding what they're saying. It's so frustrating. It's a physical lump. And it only usually gets relieved by actually saying those words, whether it's to yourself, whether it's to someone else, whether it's to that person. So important. You know, Vata are the dosha who often take a really long time to go out of their way to sort of mend something with someone they love, because that person's misunderstood me and I have to be heard. I have to. Maybe not so much out of care for that person, sometimes just like, I need to be understood. And you know, lack of vocal communication can lead to build up of Vata, and it can actually lead to long-term problems. Just this, you know, it can cause long-term Vata imbalance, because Vata is movement in the body. It's upward and downward movement. So if the upward movement gets blocked, what happens first? You know, we can get a disconnect between body and mind. So actually our mind's like, oh, I need to go for a run. Oh, I need to do this. Oh, busy, 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 busy. Oh, I need to eat some salad. Oh, I don't need to eat at all. Oh, I don't know. And the body has no, you know, it's not communicating. We don't know. So the mind has to make it up. This blockage causes that. Like, oh God, what do I want? Who am I? It's like real confusion. It can cause thyroid problems because of that lack of movement flow. It can cause problems with Apana Vata, so downward movement just doesn't flow anymore. Maybe we get constipated, or maybe we have too much of a flow. So it's all the movement in the body, bad circulation, cold hands and feet. All of that can get blocked if we're hanging on to something that we need to say for a long time as Vata dosha. It just really has to be said. We often have, you know, I think we in our society, because of gender stereotyping and because of, you know, programmed ways of being dependent on our gender, we do have a difference here between men and women when it comes to Vata. We tend to see patterns because of our socialization, not because of anything innate. You know, we are, as women, we're socialized to chat, to communicate, to talk about stuff. So as a Vata woman, it's just like, okay, you know, I can do that. I know how to do this. I have friends that support me. I've developed that around me. I know how that works. And for a man, it's like, God, you know, oh, I'm too emotional. You know, I'm feeling all this stuff and it can't come out. It's not okay. And, you know, not really taught to do that. And there's a blockage there. And that can cause a lot of problems for Vata men, because they have all this stuff and they're just not able to dispel it. They're not able to bring it outside. And what does that cause? Escapism. So I need to actually escape out of my head because it's just too much. Alcoholism, which is a form of escapism, just leaving, just disappearing somewhere, traveling loads and loads, drugs, you know, yeah, a kind of talking about something else, you know, just talking loads about a different thing to try and get something out. Work obsession, you know, so I can focus my mind on a different thing. I don't have to worry about all these thoughts. You know, I can just stop for a few minutes. So Vata and conflict. So what we're thinking about here is we're thinking about the Vata communication. How does that work? So then how is that linked to Vatas having conflict? Well, if communication is so important to Vata, we can say that's a core value. And core values, I think, are quite important when we're talking about conflict, because core values are usually something that can create conflict. We expect a certain thing, and this is what we need in our life. And if we don't get that thing, or if someone else doesn't understand that thing, then we might be in conflict with them. So, you know, communication connection particularly. So we want a connection through that communication, being heard, understood, and also freedom, the feeling of freedom, really important. lack of these things therefore creates the conflict. Misunderstanding, hurtful words. So words can really hurt Vata, and feeling misunderstood. So you've said something and it's not been taken properly. Hurtful words can really, Vata really, that's how we communicate. So if we hear someone say something abusive or just cutting or nasty, or, that can really affect Vata's sense of self. If someone's not got empathy or interest or gentleness, so Vata needs that nest to hold the bird. And if they don't have that nest, if that nest crumbles, or if it feels a bit unsupportive, they'll leave. They can't stay in this nest. They need to feel that real gentleness around them as they speak. And pressure to change or be a certain way. So that kind of putting the bird in a cage, that goes against Vata's sense of freedom. They need to feel free. Therefore, anyone trying to put a routine in, so it could be even Vata in a work situation. Sometimes Vata skip between lots of different jobs, and often it's because, oh no, they were telling me how to do it and I didn't want that, or they were giving me too much structure and routine and that was too much and I didn't like it. I want to feel free. I want to do my own thing. And what happens when Vata's in conflict? We get an imbalance in the body, as we discussed. So how does that affect the mind when Vata becomes imbalanced in the body? We might become anxious, we might feel helpless, emotional, loss of appetite because there's no energy going down into the gut, it's all in the head. Aches and pains, again, circulation problem because of the Vata movement being blocked. Tiredness, because that comes along with that. Feeling irritable and needing to move. Addictive or obsessive behaviors. And that's what I said about kind of male Vata people, but I mean, that can definitely happen to any Vata dosha as well. And yeah, needing to kind of move, that kind of irritability, restless leg syndrome, all these things can come from conflict, as well as, foods and other Vata imbalances we can get. So Vata conflict with others. And just to mention this before I start on this, these are not set states. So just because I might have more predominance of Vata in my body, it doesn't mean that this is how I will react to everything and that's how I am, that's it. We can practice, and some of this relates to tamas and rajas and sattva, we can notice these states inside of us. How am I reacting? Okay, oh, right. Okay, that's normal for me. I'm Vata, right? Okay, I'm reacting that way. Okay, that's lovely because I can see now why I'm doing that. Really useful. Do I have to do that every time? Or can I approach this differently? Is that possible? So this is not a set state. We can transcend these and use the positive attributes of our dosha and kind of leave behind some of the more difficult ones. We can do that. We have to practice, we're not just set how we are and that's how it is. And so Vata conflict with other doshas. With Pitta dosha, and as I've spoken about 1,000 times before, it's just important to reflect on the fact that our society particularly is dominant with Pitta. So this might not just be a person. This might be a general feeling, or your job, or, the value set around you that you're in conflict with, because Pitta is dominating here. So with Pitta, you might it's quite nice, I think, to start to reflect on this in our own minds. So have I met this person? Have I met this situation, where this is happening? Maybe this is a Pitta Vata scenario, Maybe it's happening inside of us. Maybe we're fighting with our dual dosha. So Pitta feels like they're being controlled. So if you think about Pitta in nature, we've got the fire, and fire takes wind to feed it. And the fire grows, the fire's fine, growing happily. And the wind gets completely sucked up and non-existent. So Vata spending too much time with Pitta and getting into a conflict with Pitta, the main problem is that feeling of like, you know, Vata needs to be understood and to be seen and heard. And Vata won't feel like that in that conflict. They'll feel like all of their air has been taken away and used. So they feel empty and like inauthentic. So yeah, Pitta likes to kind of, you know, control things. So that really opposes that Vata's natural want to be free. And yeah, as I say, won't feel seen or heard by that person, feels put down, becomes scared. So fire is scary, you know, it's the most dominant element. So actually can feel a lot of fear, like Vata with a Pitta conflict, and feels powerless. Like, oh God, like I wonder if you felt that frustration when somebody is talking down to you, or you're in a situation with somebody and maybe you've said something and they've misunderstood, and then they're very angry or, you know, upset with you, and but they won't listen and they won't understand. That feeling. And then Vata with Vata, sort of a conflict that might establish there, you know, two people with very much going on, lots of things happening. So really easy to misunderstand each other, really easy for that communication just to get, you know, a little bit confused, wanting something different. So again, it can infringe on each other's freedom. That person wants this and this person wants that. How are we going to work together? You know, and again, not feeling seen or heard, because Vata doesn't necessarily by nature hold others. You know, Vata wants to be held. Hold me. Tell me I'm beautiful. Tell me I'm great and exciting. So two birds, like they have no home. They can love each other and flutter around together, but it might get a bit difficult if they're both needing something and they can't provide it. The other can't provide it. That might cause a conflict. Kapha with Vata, so frustration. You know, Kapha is gentle and slow by nature. Everything takes a bit more time. Very stable. Earth, the earth that holds us. The water, the gentle flowing water. And Vata is movement, it's wind, it's air, you know, it likes spontaneity. So God, come on, making some waves in Kapha, like, come on, let's move. And that can be really positive, but it can also cause conflict. Yeah, so frustration, change, do something with me, you know, just move, get off the sofa. That can be, and lack of communication. So Kapha, like, so gentle, holds you, doesn't necessarily need to verbalize everything. So, you know, Vata, like, I think in this world, we do see, which is, I think, for me personally, why Ayurveda has been so helpful. Like, we do tend to see, if we don't know about this stuff, we do tend to see other people as ourselves. So we think, this person isn't communicating. There's something wrong. Something is wrong. I need to verbalize everything. Therefore, they're having a problem. And, you know, this can happen in like relationship with Vata and Kapha. It's like, come on, tell me, what's the problem? What's going on inside your head? Tell me all the stuff, because otherwise it's going to build up. And the Kapha person doesn't have something to say. You know, doesn't need to verbalize all the things. Actually, I'm fine. So just understanding that is really nice sometimes. But yeah, frustration, like, where's your communication? Or I'm telling you something, I want some feedback. Give me feedback. And the Kapha's just listened. It's like, oh yeah, I can hold you and listen to you, but I don't necessarily have loads of feedback. So you can feel a bit lonely or bored with Kapha sometimes. Conflict resolutions for Vata. So, I mean, you know, having their needs met to start with can just resolve the conflict, you know, needs to feel heard and understood. So an effective communication is necessary, sometimes with a facilitator. Some softness, that Kapha quality, you know, to balance the air, we need the earth and the water. So softness, gentleness, kindness, patience, and grounding. I can talk about this from personal experience because I've got very dominant Vata. You know, that feeling of like, I remember even when I was little, just screaming on top of the stairs because I didn't want to brush my teeth. I don't want to. I just don't want to do it. I hate it. I hate brushing my teeth. Not going to do it. Just screaming and screaming. And someone would come along, a parent would come along and shout at me, like, God, just brush your teeth. Why is it difficult? And then to me, that's like, how dare you? I'm going to scream even louder. I'm going to be heard. How dare you question me? And then, you know, it takes a lot of time, shouting. And then like curl up in a ball. It's like, no one loves me. No one understands me. And then another parent comes along and they're like, okay, here's a hug. Come on. Should we go brush our teeth now? Let's go. It's like, okay. Oh, thank you. Let's do that. You know, that softness. It can just put out it can calm down and bring to earth all of that air. It's okay, I'm in my nest now. That's okay. Needs to be around Pitta dosha less often. Bit controversial because you might be in a relationship with one, difficult. Or it might be your mom or your sister. It might be someone you can't avoid. That's okay. But maybe just space, a bit of space in the house, you know, again, from personal experience. Like, I absolutely adore my sister, but she's very Pitta dosha. So sometimes if we're around each other a long time, I just feel a little bit like, I'm just a little bit closed off. I can't quite be heard all the time. I feel a little bit dominated. I just need to go and spend time with a friend. You know, I just need a little bit of space for a bit. That can be enough, you know. Just make sure you're aware of that Pitta person in their life. Why am I so annoyed with them at the moment? Maybe you just need some space. You need to find yourself again a little bit. Movement, good for new ideas and fresh perspective. You know, going on a walk. Everything, when things are moving in the Vata body, the mind starts moving, and we slowly get the balance of Vata. Yoga, amazing for this because it can release blockages. So actually, we're really getting all the channels moving, all the movement in the body is flowing. We're balancing Vata. Really great. Communicating with someone who cares. So maybe you can't resolve a conflict with that person, but at least you can offload to that person. So having that person to offload to, you know, Vata dosha, you know, friendships are super important for that. And how do we do that ourselves? It's difficult because I think Vata often looks outwards to find help and to find value and to find love and compassion. We look outwards. Help me. I need someone to bring something in to make me feel nourished and safe. That's great if you can find that. But at those times when we can't, you know, self-soothing, if it's holding ourselves like that, if it's speaking to ourselves, just verbalizing it, if it's writing a song, writing it down, you know, getting those words out. Just also being aware of that, being aware of what do I need? Am I projecting? Am I asking for something that, you know, that person has a lot of needs themselves? Can they give me all of this stuff that I'm asking for? Is that a reason to be angry or upset with them if they can't all the time? Can I provide some of that for myself? And how do I do that? Is there a way of me doing that? I think at this point, I would love to pass on to Sophie for a little bit to show us a really nice practice that we can do if we're in this situation.
Hello, thank you. Oh, that was very insightful, very interesting. And I've got our first mudra to show you, Ganesh mudra. And kind of going off what Rihanna said about blockages and I guess, you know, kind of like Vata as an entity, as a very kind of mobile entity, when coming up against obstacles and blockages and like bumps in the road, I guess, like can kind of ruffle Vata a little bit. So I'd like to offer this mudra to you. If you'd like to join me in this Ganesh mudra, and we take the right hand on top and the left hand so it's close towards the heart, and just kind of interlock the fingers like this. and then really grip and pull the elbows out. So the elbows are straight and they're kind of like at a heart level. And this is a fantastic mudra for the Anahata chakra as well. And this mudra really shows us that the obstacles we face are within us, and we are our biggest obstacle. So I'd like you to close down the eyes as you really kind of like breathe into this mudra and settle into it and really feel the power this mudra provides. And I'm going to repeat a chant which I'm just going to post in the group chat now for your reference. It's Om Gam Ganapatiye Namaha. So this is a invocation to the Hindu god Ganesh, remover of obstacles. And I'd like for, at any point in which you feel like the vata within you has faced some kind of dead end, some form of entrapment, I'd like you to sit in meditation with this mudra and repeat either externally or internally, Om Gam Ganapatiye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapatiye Namaha. Now, this is Sanskrit, and I'm aware it is not our mother tongue, but I have written it, as I said, in the chat here, and I'd love for you to, before you go, either take a screenshot of that. If you are watching the recorded chat, then I will link this mantra in with the recording in the notes, so that you can really come back to this. And then we're just going to take one more minute in this mudra, internally repeating Om Gam Ganapatiye Namaha. 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 Let those words resonate and vibrate around the heart chakra. Let them vibrate and push and obliterate and destroy any obstacles in your way. And also let the arms release and just let the palms rest down your lap for a second. We started with this kind of receiving energy right before Rihanna began speaking. And I believe that's the first part of communication. And then this next part, the removing of obstacles and any blockages, which may have been there since childhood, since birth, is the next part. So really look at these alongside the doshas, these kind of activities as almost like the points and the stages of communication. And I would like now to pass back to Rihanna, who will discuss the Pitta dosha, and we can move forward with the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really nice. Very relevant. Okay. So the Pitta communication. Seats of Pitta in the eyes, the head, the stomach, the blood. So communication is for a purpose. So head, eyes, our intelligence, our intellect. It's for a purpose, to get from A to B. Pitta is that rocket flying to one set destination, one set route, planned out, advance. How do we get there the fastest way, efficient and correct? So it's for a purpose, not to just chitter chatter. Information, or to inject information, to get it, to inject it. We might communicate as Pitta to assert some kind of authority or power. we might communicate as Pitta to make someone laugh. Might be a purpose, you know. Pitta likes to dominate the group, to have people, you know, laughing, to be the leader of the group. That's sort of Pitta's role in a social situation. You know, the person creating the fun. That's my purpose today. In the work, different purpose. This purpose. What's the information? Give it to me now. Needs to feel respect and authority. So might you, yeah, as I say, might use communication to guide that. Likes to communicate through visuals. So Pitta's seating is in the eye. So, you know, likes to have clear visuals in order to communicate. It might be a subtle communication. It might be like, oh, I've got a nice car. What does that say about me? I'm communicating something to you about who I am. Good at communicating information. Not so good, not necessarily so good at communicating emotional things, but great at communicating information. To the point, organized and well researched. You know, they are the people who will pick you up on stuff. Where's that from? Where's that research from? Can you send me the link to that paper? Don't just say a fact to me if you don't know where it's from. That's what their job is. You know, devil's advocate in every situation because of this. Have you thought that through? What about this? You know, sometimes disregarding imaginative or creative thinking a little bit and emotional experience. So, oh, you've had an emotional experience of that, but where's the statistics? Maybe disvaluing alternative ways of thinking. You know, Pitta likes routine and structure. Like, this is the structure. How does that fit into this? It doesn't. So I'm going to disregard that. And sometimes Pitta cares a bit more about information and facts than the relationship. So that's the person who you're having a chat and maybe you're offloading some stuff and talking about you. And but then if you say something like, oh, you know, I think it was 10 years ago and this happened and this. No, I don't think so. I think it was 14 years ago. I think it was 14 years ago. That's more important to that person in that moment. That's more important than letting you speak about your experience. It's really important to them. You've got to get the information right. So, you know, that can inhibit like a social communication sometimes for Pitta. Sometimes, you know, we do value empathy a lot in this society. We really care about it. We expect that from people. We expect that from our friends. And I think sometimes Pitta dosha really struggles with this, with socializing sometimes, because they can be the leader, they can be the fun person in that group, but one-on-one or having those emotional connections, like they've forgotten too many times to put that relationship over the fact, or, you know, that person maybe has a different experience to them and they don't get it, they don't understand it. Why are you not heading to the moon? Why are you heading somewhere else? I don't understand. And it can be really hard because, you know, we expect, I think, in our culture that empathy is natural to everyone. We've all got it, you know, we can all display empathy. But for Pitta, it's actually genuinely harder. It's not a skill they possess naturally. So therefore, I think some understanding from the other doshas is also necessary. It's hard to not experience empathy from someone, but it's also hard to be that person who doesn't really understand what you're feeling. Why is that person suddenly off with me? Why is that person was my friend a minute ago and now they're not talking to me and I don't really understand why? Yeah, that's really hard. It's really hard. So, you know, maybe we can use this communication, this Pitta communication. Maybe we'll have a bit of that inside of us, maybe a little bit of Pitta, maybe we're Jewel dosha. Like, great, like that communication for those factual, informative times, for in that job situation where you want to move up, you know, really useful. But maybe not always the perfect type of communication for the kind of emotional times. So if you do have a couple of doshas to utilize, you can probably work between both of them. This is for this time, this is when I'm at home. Pitta and conflict. So core values: information, factual knowledge, politeness, humor. I think when I first said politeness to Sophie, she was like, why politeness? I don't know about that. So yeah, we often think like, oh, Pitta's quite angry and not empathetic. Why do they care about politeness? Because it's part of the structure. This is the structure we're living in. This is how we talk to each other. I've learned this. We talk like this. We say thank you and please. And if someone doesn't say that, I don't really know how to relate to them. What's going on? Yeah, so politeness is important for that reason. Incorrect information or alternative viewpoints can create conflict. Someone is being over emotional because the Pitta person they just don't understand. It can be just a bit overwhelming. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to react to this. Trying to take attention. So Pitta likes to lead. So someone else trying to lead. And causes of upset and conflict, disrespect, feeling patronized. It's the worst thing you can do. They need respect and to feel like status and authority. They patronize me. Questioning of their authority or knowledge. Disorganization or poor quality work. So they're expecting, you to fit into that structure too. They're expecting a lot of you. They expect that of themselves as well. Lack of purpose, drive, or general chattiness with no outcome. And what happens when Pitta's imbalance in the body can become irritable, angry. Conflict is going to play out in that way. So it's likely that it's going to cause some anger. And you might get like quite a fieriness in that moment. Maybe even aggressive. Could be self-abusive. Pitta people are more likely, sadly, to self-harm. It's high expectations of themselves, and then they feel that Pitta imbalance when they don't do what they expect themselves to do, and so it starts with aggression, and it kind of, it's relieving. I can let some of my Pitta out in this aggressive nature on myself. IBS, acne, headaches, putting others down to feel more status, to have that power over them. I don't feel power. I feel like that's insecure. My power isn't secure right now, so I need to assert it. Overwork, that might be something they are drawn to. I know I can do this. I can't do this emotional stuff. I don't know what's going on, but I can work. Or drinking and smoking. Both of these things are very high Pitta substances. So it's like, I'm quite attracted to that quality. I know that in myself. I've got a lot of it going on right now, so I want more. I want more of it. That's how imbalances tend to work in Ayurveda. So conflict with other doshas, confrontation with Pitta. So you've got two sides going against each other, two fires, clashing. You know something? No, I know it. This kind of factual war. Anger on both sides. Really, really hard to do something about this, on their own, because they're both holding their position. I'm going to dominate this situation. I'm the best. Usually about status or knowledge, and they don't back down. What do they need? Probably a facilitator. Maybe a Vata facilitator. Facilitate this. Okay, let's just hear what you're both feeling. How about that? What are we both feeling? What are both of our needs? Take it back to the person level, because the Pitta's like all in the head. It's like on a head level, I don't understand you right now. Pitta with Vata can feel annoyed with Vata's lack of routine and structure. Maybe this happens in a workplace, so Pitta might be a boss and Vata's like coming late or something. It's like, oh God, how unreliable, horrible. Doesn't want to deal with complex emotions, so Vata's needs, doesn't understand them. Can see as weak or ignorant. So Vata likes to say lots of ideas, just chat about interesting stuff that they're thinking. With Pitta, it's like, where's the stuff to back it up? That's really annoying. Stop it. And Kapha and Pitta. Again, I guess, Pitta's very driven, so you have that kind of annoyance from the slow pace. They might just get angry with Kapha, like, God, come on, you're so lazy. They might be quite abusive, like, oh, You're lazy, lack of drive. What are you doing here? What's the point of you? Can see them as boring or unfun. So I've noticed sometimes with Pitta people that I know, I've noticed if they hang out with a Kapha person quite a bit, it can be really nice for them. It's really like a gentle dosha to be around, very nourishing. Like that water calms the fire down. They're not going to get into an outright conflict very often. But when, when you say like, oh, how are they doing? Oh, I don't know. I think they're okay. It's like that Kapha person has been kind of disregarded. Like you clearly don't have anything going on because you're not speaking up all the time like I am. It's like they often actually see them as kind of boring people. Oh yeah, not much going on with them. Like, yeah, you haven't asked though. Maybe you don't know how to ask, maybe. So conflict resolutions. Yeah, so needs facilitation. We can't just have this like two Pitta situation. It's really difficult to do on their own. They need someone to facilitate that, to get that communication flowing. Needs patience and sturdiness and willingness. So again, those Kapha qualities can be really useful in that situation. Like, okay, why did that person annoy you at work? Just tell me. I'm just going to listen. I'm just going to show gentleness towards you. Yeah, being around other Pitta dosha less again. And movement outside, cooling things, cooling breath, cooling movement, being in nature, swimming can be really relieving, really stress relieving. And, there's a lot of stress that has been created by a conflict for Pitta. It's all stress, anger, who needs literal cooling of the body. Everything's hot. Needs to feel respect and that their points have been taken on board. So how do, if we're dealing with someone who's quite high Pitta and they're not backing down on something and we don't know how to deal with them and they just, seem to be quite angry about it, they need to feel some kind of dominance or respect, or that they have said something that's going to be of use. So just give them a little bit of something that they think is important. This sounds manipulative, but we have to do this stuff sometimes. Oh, please, can you inform me of something that you know? I really want to learn this from you. They like to inform you, give them that. Like, that's a nice softener for Pitta. Please, let me learn from you. Yeah. And yeah, also kind of actually, practice. So practice of empathy. Like Pitta loves to learn. So they can learn stuff. They can learn this stuff. If they want to be more empathetic, that's something that they can learn through structures and certain forms of communication. So non-violent communication is a great one. It's just a clear structure which helps you empathize with someone and understand what's going on. Wait, I'm really angry with you right now, but what does that non-violent communication book say about it? Okay, now I'm going to think about your need. Oh, that's why you're annoyed with me. You need this. Just actually putting that structure in place. That's really great for Pitta. And before we move on to that, we'll just pass over to Soph again.
Thank you. So I'd like to discuss the one of the yogic principles, part of the yamas and the niyamas, and this is ahimsa. Ahimsa is non-violence, and I think that this is number one really important to consider when we're thinking of Pitta in conflict, for all that Rihanna has said. And also in our next stage of communication. So we've had, like I said, the reception, the receiving of allowing all this information, anyone else in our space at the beginning, and then we moved on to unblocking any energy that was potentially stagnant or in our way. And now we've got quite a bit of momentum in our system. And if we think about this in terms of conflict and communication as well, we've got this momentum, and often what we see when there's a lot of momentum and drive behind a point or something, it can turn into violence. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean in terms of physical violence, or even verbal violence. This can be just like an aggressive tone, or just a kind of like, I often feel like passion sometimes is taken in a kind of, I don't know, it's taken in a way of violence. And this is neither right nor wrong, but I think this is definitely something to consider as we come to like this point of our discussion, is communication and violence, and what it is to be a non-violent communicator and have non-violent conflict. So we're going to take a mudra called, this is a heart mudra, called Hridaya mudra. And we're going to take the thumb, and we're going to take the index finger and wrap the index finger into the corner of the thumb, the base of the thumb. And then we're going to let the middle finger, tip of the middle finger and the tip of the ring finger rest on top of one another on the thumb. That looks like that. And then I want if you'd be so kind to put the little finger straight up, a little bit like a terrestrial. So we're in this kind of like very wrapped, contorted mudra. And I invite you to hold it in one hand and place the other palm, and place it palm down, face down on the knee, and close the eyes. You can rest the hand that is holding the mudra on top of the other knee. And we're going to say internally or externally the chant. It goes Om Ahimsa Param Dharma. And I'm just going to put it in the chat here for everyone's reference afterwards. So this is cultivating life's journey and calling from the universal principle of compassion, empathy, without harm, violence, discrimination, injustice, and inequity. So as we sit with our eyes softly closed, one palm face flat down on the knee, the other held in the mudra, we repeat internally, Om Ahimsa Param Dharma. Om Ahimsa Param Dharma. Om Ahimsa Param Dharma. Om Ahimsa Param Dharma. And then let that mantra echo through the mind, through the body, through the mudra. As you take a moment to think about where you lie within the realms of ahimsa. What is violence to you? What is non-violence to you? How may you have communicated in a way that might have seemed violent to others in the past, but not violent to you? And alternately, how may have you communicated in a way that seemed violent to you, but didn't come across as violent to others? I often think about this as a woman in particular, and I will often say things to friends or colleagues, and then I'll be overthinking it for 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever, weeks. I'll be like, oh God, I said something, I think I came across as really rude or sharp. And then I'll finally go back to this person and be like, I'm really sorry if I sounded really aggressive or harsh. And they'll say, what? No. So it's a really interesting contemplation, and I invite you to take this mudra and repeat the mantra Om Ahimsa Param Dharma in meditation when contemplating where you sit in this space. We'll just take a few more moments here, and then when you're ready, let go of the mudra, blink open the eyes, And when Rihanna is ready, I will pass over to her for the next little bit.
Thank you. That's lovely. I think that's really relevant as well. Sophie's quite Vata dosha, like I am, and because of that core value of connection via communication, Vata tends to overthink a lot of their communications. So it's kind of like, we might call it a kind of people-pleasing culture. And all it is because that's a key value. And Vata also has a tendency towards worry when it gets in balance, because worry, what is worry? It's very close to excitement. It's a movement in the mind, so very Vata. So, worrying about other people's reaction to what we've said, and like if we've said the right thing, God, it plagues the mind of Vata dosha so much. So just being aware that someone else might not be taking it like that at all. Maybe we don't need to worry about that, or maybe they are because they are Vata. Oh, So kapha communication. Seats of kapha in the nose, the saliva, the skin, and the chest, the fat and the muscle. So as you can see, skin, fat, muscle, saliva. Kapha loves to eat lovely food. That's maybe a way of communicating. Make kapha a lovely meal. Oh, yum. That's communicating your love to me. Skin and fat and muscle, touch. Kapha like very affectionate people. They love to cuddle and touch and stroke. Love it. And even nice smells. Lovely smell. And that's connected with taste, of course. Heart chakra. So it's like a deep, constant feeling of love. So if you're loved by a kapha person, it's very constant. It's very forgiving, and it's very it takes a while to get to that place, but it's a very deep, consistent, stable love. So they don't necessarily need that many words. They're communicating all the time with these things. So as we spoke about before, sometimes that's frustrating for others. It's like, communicate with your words. It's like, no, I'm communicating with my hands and my touch. They need to feel love and have loved around them, because they're kind of, they do care about this area, this heart chakra, this chest area. And when something challenging happens and kapha doesn't communicate in words, I think, I've talked to quite a few people this has happened to with relationships to kapha, and this can be really hard. This is a difficult attribute of kapha. If they can't, they're not used to this communication with words, and maybe they don't feel they need it. What kapha tends to do is they expect that someone has understood something, and maybe they haven't, or they expect that somebody has registered, or like they has the same values as them, and actually that person's just being really unkind on purpose. Like kapha's like, that person said this thing, and they must be just trying to hurt me. But actually that person has different values, so maybe they're trying to communicate information and it's come across in a different way. But for kapha, it's like, God, wow, okay. But they won't say, oh, that was weird, why did you say that? They'll just sit on it like, God, tried to hurt me then, that was tough, and just not say it. And so what can happen over time, it can build up, because the words don't come out, and it can build up in this heart chakra. So it's not let out by the throat chakra, and it builds and builds and builds. It can cause sort of a deep sadness and depression eventually, but it can also cause those relationships that maybe you've been in or maybe you've heard of, where someone will everything seems absolutely fine, and then they'll just leave. I actually have had enough right now. And the other person, I've got no idea what happened, completely blindsided. And it's, that's sometimes that kapha quality. I know that you're just trying to hurt me, and I'm just going to build up slowly. I'm going to forgive you as much as I can, but I'm never, ever going to forget. So after some time, it will build up. It's inevitable. Extremely good at listening. So very good for anyone else who wants to communicate verbally. They will sit and listen very nicely. Observers in the world, so observing everyone, actually have a lot of wisdom and knowledge. If you ask them about what's going on with someone else, they will tell you, they'll be able to communicate that to you very effectively because they have seen, they've observed. They haven't been, their ego isn't always involved in the situation. Who am I? How am I presenting? They're listening, they're watching. Very good to talk to if you're confused about something or someone. And good at understanding others because of that natural, that observing, and that gentleness as well. Very forgiving and kind and gentle. Kapha and conflict. So core values: kindness, loyalty, and affection. So it takes a long time to get in with a Kapha person. They only have a few spaces, and you have to really trust you to let you in. But once you're in, I'm going to just love you so hard, and be so kind and so loyal. That's it for me now. Kapha tries to avoid conflict. Kapha, will avoid any kind of confrontation really at all costs. And this can mean that things do build up over time. Nothing said. But it also means that usually you don't have a lot of big fiery arguments in the house. It's quite gentle. The Kapha person will just take themselves away and have space, and sometimes that's enough, and that's okay, and then they'll feel fine. Space and time. Tends to leave the room. Just leave. I don't want to be in this space. I don't want to have conflict. So causes of upset. So things that go against those core values: unkindness and selfishness. So as I say, this might not be genuine unkindness. It might be someone who's pitta, who's nitpicking in an argument and saying, I don't think that's correct. And their values the knowledge, the fact. They're not thinking about the relationship. They're not thinking about whether they're being kind or not. They don't want to be unkind, but they just have a different value. But for that Kapha person, it's like, God, wow, why are you saying that? It's not necessary. That's really unkind. Why are you doing that? When someone is asking a lot of them, so putting a lot of pressure on them, Kapha will not carry on going to the gym if their first instructor they meet pushes them to the nth degree and they're sweating like crazy and it's really painful. Forget it, I can't do that. No, needs a really gentle, slow approach. Had enough of you, you're trying to make me do 7 activities in a day. Not going to do that, and it's like all or nothing. So it's like, I'll either get into a really good routine and do this every day, or if something appears too challenging from the beginning, I'm not going to try anymore. That's it. I'm not going to get involved with that. When someone is asking, too much spontaneity, change or instability, so shifting things around them all the time, they like that groundedness. It's like, I'm the earth, I want to be still, I want to be staying here, I don't want to be moving all the time. And when their home or family is at risk, so that's when you see maybe that more fiery side of Kapha, they will protect people around them. What happens when Kapha builds up in the body? So maybe they've had someone be really unkind all the time. Maybe their core value of loyalty or affection isn't, they're not experiencing that. Maybe they've just had a breakup. It's really hard for Kapha. God, wow. This heart chakra area, God, it's sinking. My core thing in my life to have love around me is gone. Can result in depression and a low sadness. Kapha builds up and it's this heaviness and inertia. Emotional eating, because, food is very comforting. And, again, Kapha's in the tongue, loves to taste. It's really nice. Water retention or weight gain, maybe tiredness, lethargy, sleeping in the day, needing distractions. And fire, getting moving, and mucus as well. Kapha conflict with other doshas, so pitta can find them selfish, self-orientated, mean or pressuring. Kind of speaks for itself. If Kapha has a lot of core value of kindness, and pitta is just about the knowledge, like that's gonna cause problems sometimes. And often won't get into a big fight, just won't want to be around them very much. Just leave the room. Leave the room. I don't know what this person's doing. Maybe I don't want them in my core team right now. Vata can find their passion and emotions a bit too much. Just a bit difficult to relate to, but don't really know what's going on. You've got all these emotions, and I'm dealing with things very nicely. And when things come, like, I don't have loads of other stuff going on, like 100 miles an hour in my head. So I can deal with that thing and process it and then let it go. But this Vata person, they're just overwhelmed with this tiny thing. Why? I don't understand. It's just a weird misunderstanding. I don't really understand how to deal with them. And can find them a bit annoying. Just talking. I just want a bit of silence and peace, like, go away. But again, not necessarily going to cause the kind of conflict that we think of when we think of conflict. It's like a kind of just internal, like, oh, struggle, just leave me alone, I want peace. And then Kapha and Kapha, again, really unlikely to have a conflict. They're both avoiding like an actual conflict at all costs, but then again, you get a different form of conflict. So you might just get an internal conflict of sort of slowly getting like a bit low, and that inertia and that heaviness together, and kind of supporting each other with that, unmotivating, cause a further imbalance, like sinking together. Like that can be hard. It can be an internal conflict for both of them. So resolutions. So needs a genuine apology. So if you have a Kapha person in your life and you upset them, like, all you need to do, if you know that, like, oh yeah, it was my fault, like they're very, very happy to forgive. So just an apology, or to see a behavior change. It doesn't even have to be a sorry. It could be that in the next few days you're just really kind to them. You show them real kindness. Needs encouragement to communicate. So obviously you have that blockage forming because they don't find communication verbally very natural. But to actually understand people, we do have to do a bit of that. To understand someone else's point of view, to understand if they were being nasty to us on purpose, so actually some encouragement. Maybe a Vata person coming around and being like, communicate with me, can be useful. Needs space and time, just needs time sometimes, and they're okay. Needs touch and affection. That's really lovely. It's just very comforting after a fight. And needs to move or change something. Sometimes the conflict is internal, and it's just this sadness and this lowness. Or, they stagnated maybe in their relationship, but it's not working, but they don't know why. And it's just sad and stagnant. So they need to really be encouraged to have like a big change, something to move. Because that Kapha energy, it's the earth, and we need to crack it sometimes, or it's the water, and we need to send it down a river sometimes rather than let it stagnate in a pool, to actually bring about something new and to stop that imbalance forming. At this point, again, I'll pass over to Soph.
Hello. Yeah, I mean, so with Kapha, there's a lot of, letting go that needs to happen. And as Rihanna has said, there's kind of this like need for movement, and there's this kind of like, I guess, need for trust as well. And as we come to our kind of almost final stage in our process of communication, we're now at a point where we kind of really do need to let go and trust ourselves. So we've kind of undone or released all of the blockage. Well, we've kind of like received the energy, released the blockages, kind of come to a point where we're thinking what is right, what is wrong for us in the situation. Now we just got to let go and let ourselves kind of communicate authentically, and kind of, I guess, almost like in a way of, I don't know, we kind of got to, although in the last phase we were like, we were confronting that fire, we've actually got to maybe look at cultivating that fire now, and that rajasic energy. And I feel like a great way to do this is by taking Kali Mudra, also known as Shapana Mudra. And for this, you would just get the index fingers and point them like this and all of the other thumb and fingers are wrapped. And just raise the arms above the head straight. And I want you to internally repeat as we take this mudra of confronting fears, of just kind of like empowerment, of, yeah, I guess just like deep empowerment and confrontation, and looking fear in the eye. And we really just envisage this as we're holding this mudra. And internally, I want you to feel it in the pit of your stomach. Ram, ram. That's RAM, ram. And I really just want you to feel this vibration, this bija mantra. Is just sitting there, and it's really vibrating, and it's vibrating for all your koshas, all your bodies, all of the elements of yourself. As you're looking, your fear, you're looking at the injustice, you're looking at everything that you feel like you need to communicate, you need to kind of confront in the world, and you're looking at it face on, and you are there strong. And I want you to hold that for another 30 seconds and just really think about that. And then a couple more breaths here. When we let Hindu goddess Kali envelop her lovely self all over us, all over our aura, we come back down to earth. You can rest the palms down on the knees and think about what really is holding you back. And, you know, think about that fear. Is that fear of being wrong, of saying the wrong thing? A lot of the time it is. And we've just got to go for it. We've got to be, you know, we can't be afraid of being the wild woman or the out of control person who doesn't know when to speak at the right time, whatever. Sometimes we just got to trust that we speak, and that's it. Whatever comes is meant to be. So to that short interlude, I'll pass you over to Rihanna for just like ending summary, and then we'll finish with a short chant and a prayer before we open up for discussion.
Thank you. That was really powerful. Just have just a few little notes on dual doshas, because sometimes I feel like, you know, people can definitely relate to the doshas and put them together in their own mind, but it's sometimes nice to just be seen as well as a dual dosha, like you're important, and sometimes it's difficult to be one as well. And yeah, this can cause some inner conflict because we've got two opposing characteristics in our mind. So that's important to note. So Kapha Pitta, like, what does that inner conflict look like? It can look like high expectations of themselves, self-punishment, and inner conflict can act dominant or angry, but it's more easily able to soften, forgive, and empathize. So that's to the outside world. Maybe has that a bit of that, Pitta anger, but maybe can at the same time catch it. Oh, actually, I'm going to be gentle and kind. That's not all necessary right now. So can be quite a nice, useful balance in a conflict. But yeah, high expectation of themselves, because remember, like Pitta and Kapha, how do they work together? Like Pitta can feel quite frustrated with Kapha's slowness and gentleness. So inside, it's like, why are you like this? Why do you want to sleep today? Why do you need to calm down and not work so much? We've got all this stuff to do. So the Pitta side's like, be better, you know, do these things that I want you to do. But the Kapha side's like, I don't want to do these things. I want to do these things. I don't need that right now. I need this to nourish me. So it's like this, but it's often because Pitta is dominant, is often coming from the pitta voice. So if that's happening to you, that's just something to recognize. Like, oh, where's this coming from? Is this my pitta or is this my kapha? Which one's useful right now? Which one do I actually need? And what is my body feeling? Am I feeling some tension? Am I feeling some hurt or some emptiness? What dosha do I actually need to nourish right now? Pitta's telling me this thing, but do I need to do that? Or is there some other thing that needs help right now? And that is the same with, kapha and, pitta and vata as well. Like, you have this internal conflict. And it's really hard with pitta vata because, pitta is so dominant of vata. Like, at least kapha is quite stable, so it can deal with a certain amount of pitta rubbish. But vata's quite insecure by nature because vata's like this all the time. So catch them when they're good and they're like, woohoo, let's go crazy. Catch them in the bad time and it's like, oh my God, I hate myself. So yeah, pitta can really cause quite toxic thoughts in pitta vata. It's like, God, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. Like, why can't you concentrate better? It's concentrating on those vata characteristics it doesn't like. Why can't you concentrate better? Why can't you be better? But also it can play out, in a nice way. It can play out in, being able to let go and be free and fun, but also concentrate and do that hard work that needs doing. It can be a sort of work hard, play hard mentality. You might notice that in someone and think, oh, maybe pitta vata. But it can also cause burnout. So, conflict for this dosha, like that dryness of vata. So drying everything out like the limp plant, and the burning of pitta, inflammation, fire, and also drying more, drying things out even more, limp and tiredness, chronic fatigue. And also fear and anger. So you get fear and anger coming together. So it can be quite challenging for that reason. Kapha vata, feel maybe in a conflict between the heavy and the light quality. Can lead to eating disorders or self-image issues because of that. Like vata's like, I want to be light, I want to be light, I want to be a bird. And the kapha side of the body's like, no, this is how I am. I don't need that, this is what I need. And, wanting food and wanting comfort via that. And then the vata side being like, no, check it all out. I don't want anything. So yeah, really challenging sometimes. And also sometimes these people who are kapha vata and diagnosed with bipolar, labels can be useful. So I don't know if that label is always useful. But because really in Ayurveda, it's often these two opposing sides. And, it just plays out in that way. So some days it's like, oh, I'm having a kapha day and I'm just going to rest and I'm just going to be still. And another day it's like, God, I've got so much energy and I need to create and do this stuff. So yeah, sometimes in society we're like a bit confused by that. And conflict between the stable and the irregular can cause confusion in finding purpose at work, because we don't tend to mix those two very often in work situations. Yeah, and can be really helpful for sure. I know we're talking about conflict, but of course can be really helpful, can actually be self-soothing, very self-soothing dosha. Like, God, oh, anxiety's coming. Oh no, it's okay. I'm all right. Don't worry. I can do that myself. I've got both those qualities. Great. The irregularity might cause hurt or conflict in others. So this kapha side is like, yes, I'll be there at 3. And the vata side screws everything up and, oh no, too much happening, something else happens. But the kapha side's, oh no, I wanted to be there for that person. That's really hard. Kapha pitta vata, wow, complex constitution, has the needs and attributes associated with all the dosha. So inner conflict is usually caused by an imbalance of one or two. It's usually caused by an imbalance, because when you have all 3, that's quite, and you're in balance, that's quite a balanced life. Like, that's going to be kind of okay. You can self-soothe majorly and be very independent. But yeah, usually an imbalance is causing that. So that's about looking at what is happening in the body. Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling fear? Am I feeling this? Where's this coming from? Which dosha is out of balance? And then outer conflict might come from difficult accepting a lack of balance in others' lives. So I can balance everything myself. I'm very independent. I can sort everything out. But what are you doing? This is wrong. Like, you're not balanced. And then just a few notes really on attachment and expectations. So, you know, a lot of our discomfort and our conflict and our misunderstanding comes from lack of understanding of other people's doshas and their state, for sure. But as I say, you know, we can practice these things as well, and we can always also we don't have to feel that frustration and anger towards others, you know. For every dosha, our relationships with others are often affected by an expectation of what they're going to give us. What are our needs? These things. And how is that person going to give me my needs? Oh, I'm expecting that they will. That's what I expect of them in this relationship. Oh, but they're not. They're not giving me everything. So actually that's really hard. Like, oh God, because we expected it and then it doesn't come. So then we feel grief and loss. And, you know, the person's not aware of our needs. They're probably preoccupied with their own needs. And that's the point where we use these things, you know, we think about these doshas, we think about our own doshas and how to nourish ourselves. How is that possible? Can we get our needs from ourselves? And sometimes in our life, we even bring up doshas and they cause imbalance maybe later on, but we really needed them at the time. So a lot of people tend to bring up pitta, like at some point, like things are really hard. So bring up the pitta dosha in our life to get us through. And it gets us through. It's the fire that we need at that point. And it's really, really helpful. And thank God we have that. Great. But then by the end, maybe we're in a safe place. Maybe we took ourselves to a safer place, but it's still raging. And then that fire becomes a bit destructive. So it's also about, you know, letting go of attachment that we have as well. Maybe that fire's got us through things. So we're quite attached to it. We love that fire because I don't know where I'd be without it. Actually, sometimes it's nice to look at these different sides of us and take them a little bit out of our body for a moment and say, you know, why did you come? What was that for? Recognize, okay. Oh, it was for that. Okay, yeah. I needed you for that, it's true. And then, okay, what's the situation now? Do I need your work still? Do I need it? Maybe not. But thank you. Thank you. Like, God, that was useful. Thank you so much for that. But you know, maybe you can leave now. Maybe I can let you go. And just being really kind like that. But yeah, having attachment within who we are, you know, who do I identify as? What makes me me? That can be hard as well. That can cause conflict, inner and outer, I think. And yeah, we can release other people too. We get attached to them, like, oh, this is the relationship that will end my suffering. This person has everything I need. But if that person goes away, or if that person doesn't fulfill those, then we're completely broken and empty. And, you know, we kind of keep expecting them to be that way. And then we feel that really deep loss because we attach so much of our happiness to that person. So we need to, you know, be able to release that person as well. And we can do that again by understanding our dosha, understanding what we require. Okay, maybe we do need people around us. Of course, we're in a community, like we're community beings. But do we need that person for our happiness? Or can we love being around them and enjoy them and appreciate who they are, but also not attach them to our identity and our sense of self and our happiness? Is there a point at which we can say, okay, you're not fulfilling that need, and that's because you're you. And how can I do that? What can I actually do to achieve that myself? And I think that goes on to our original points about just, yeah, that's that amazing ether, that space in our mind. We can expand. You know, we can expand our love. We can envelop ourselves in it. We can expand our idea of who we are. We can just keep growing and expanding. It's not fixed at all. And that's really important, I think. Yeah, so to finish, we're going to pass on to Sophie again and say, yeah, lovely chant, I think.
Yeah, so I just like to end with it's a traditional Vedic mantra, a Sanskrit prayer. And it's been used for many centuries to invoke greater states of compassion and peace. And I think, yeah, we'd really like to end on that note, and just kind of the deeper meaning here, I think, is compassion and understanding at the end of the day, and empathy. So I'm just going to copy and paste the mantra into the chat. Again, for anyone who is listening to the recording, these will be in the notes. And so the mantra is Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. And this means, in English, it means, may all beings everywhere be happy and free. And may the thoughts, words, and actions of my own life contribute in some way to that happiness and to that freedom for all. So again, I'll just put this in the chat. And I think that it's probably one of my favorite mantras. It's a really lovely one, and I'm just gonna chant it 3 times to close the practice, and feel free to join in. And also, as with any of these mantras, just let it resonate within you and just kind of, I guess, hum along if anything. So let's place the hands in Anjali Mudra at the heart center, with the thumbs pressed against the sternum, the heart center. Just tuck the chin slightly in, and the back of the neck is long, crown of the head's pointing up towards the ceiling. Take a big inhale. Exhale out the mouth. And after the next inhale, I'm going to begin chanting. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Thank you so much for joining us in this workshop. May you go forth in compassion, empathy, and goodwill. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was lovely. So I'll just, how do I stop recording? I'll just stop recording now.